Welcome to the second interview in our series recognizing former women's athletes, coaches, and administrators from CCIW institutions. My name is Mike Krizman, and I serve as the CCIW's Assistant Executive Director. This series is part of the CCIW 75th anniversary celebration, and we continue this series with former Carroll University student athlete, Mary Langenfeld. Mary, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
A 1978 graduate of Carroll, Mary played 4 years on the Pioneer volleyball and basketball teams, as well as 1 year on the track and field team. She captained both the volleyball and basketball teams for 3 years and was a two-time WIC-WAC all-conference performer during her freshman and sophomore seasons. Additionally, she was a two-time first-team WWIAC first-team all-conference performer as a junior and a senior. Physical education and history education major, Mary spent 33 years teaching and coaching at the high school level, but still found time to stay active in sports, playing on the USA national team, as well as being invited for Olympic team tryouts. In 1978, she was drafted by the Minnesota Phillies of the Women's Professional Basketball League. She was also the first women's athlete ever inducted into Carroll Athletics Hall of Fame in 1988, and she was inducted into the first women's Wisconsin Coaches Hall of Fame class following her successful stint as a high school volleyball and basketball coach. So with that, Mary, I'll ask my first question. Reflecting on your time as a student athlete, how did it help shape your life post-college?
I had to learn how to manage my time. In that era, your parents pretty much controlled what you wanted to do and how you did it. And you had to learn how to be self-sufficient. You had to learn how to do great in the classroom as well as being good on the field, and somehow stay healthy between the two of them and get everything accomplished. So you had to learn to do that yourself. You could not call your parents. Long distance cost way too much money. It better have been like having to go to the hospital or something if you called them. Mm-hmm. And you were expected to make it on your own. And it was a big leap from high school.
So what was your most memorable experience competing as a student athlete?
I have a couple. One of my favorite one was my junior year in basketball. We had lost some people, some seniors the year before, so our regular season record was not as great. You know, we were not the #1 seed going into the state tournament, and at that time, all the state schools in Wisconsin were in one conference. Mm-hmm. And so it was a 3-day tournament, and we got through the first 2 rounds. Back then, you know, we'd had 2 sets of uniforms, and then we were supposed to put on one of the youth sets of uniforms to play the championship game. Mm-hmm. And we were all very upset about this, being women, of course. And our coach surprised us. She ran out in between time and went to a laundromat and washed the uniforms and presented them to us in the locker room. And we were so sky high, we went out and played the game of our lives and won a state championship we never thought we'd win. Mm-hmm. That advanced us to the Midwest tournament, which was one of our goals. We were still trying to make it to the nationals, and we knew we had to win the state to be able to advance, so we did.
Mm-hmm. How would you say women's athletics has been able to evolve since your playing days?
I think a lot of it has to do with the NCAA when they first took over. You know, the AIAW was in charge during my era. Mm-hmm. But when the NCAA took over, they were used to administrating sport at a national level. Mm-hmm. And they made, when combined with Title IX, they made things very equal, and they stuck to it. You know, the law made them stick to it. And that changed a lot of things. And it opened up a lot of doors. Such things as the scholarships. I think the year after I came to Carroll, that's when they first could offer like a partial scholarship. They had no full scholarships for women yet. Mm-hmm. But then you just got better facilities, better coaches, better training. It just kind of all came with the money and the influence of the NCAA. And let's see what else. And then the other big thing I thought changed a lot was, it's kind of my own personal opinion, is the smaller families. You know, you had a lot of athletic men who only had 2 girls, and all of a sudden these 2 girls were supposed to be athletes, you know, and their dad really worked with them from little on to become athletes. Mm-hmm. And the whole image of what a female athlete is completely changed from when I played to today. You know, a female athlete is very well respected. She's very popular in school. She's considered some of the most beautiful women in the world, the female athletes, and it just wasn't like that during my era. So I'm very proud that you could be smart and athletic and someone thinks you're a beautiful person.
As a follow-up to the last question, in what ways are women's athletics supported now versus back when you played? You touched a little bit on that earlier when you talked about just getting a jersey for the second game. What other perks do you see now that women's athletes are more privy to than they were back when you played?
Well, they get a letter. That was a big accomplishment. Carroll gave them to us, after many years when they decided to give women letters. They went back and gave it to all of us, which I thought was a nice accomplishment. Something small but great. They get money for their food. Our coach used to have to make sandwiches at home before we'd leave for a game on the road, and they rented vans, and like I was one of the van drivers, so we would drive the vans to the meet. And then you would compete, and then you had to drive home. And so that was a big change too, that, you got a vehicle and a driver and a per diem and just a lot of the things that the men enjoyed that we didn't have a chance to do. Let's see, other things that have changed, I think access to weight facilities. We could do it very early in the morning, but then after that, the men's programs had all the time. So the training, you had to be very dedicated to get up very early in the morning to do your weight training and things like that. So I think, and then we were always lucky at Carroll because we had Ganfield Gymnasium. I don't know if you've ever seen Ganfield, but the men had just built a Van Male Field House, and that was for the men. And then the women, it was actually kind of nice. We had our own facility, which was kind of unique during that era for the women to have their own facility.
So I wanted to just get off script just a little bit and ask you about being drafted by the Minneapolis Phillies. How did that come about, and how would you describe that experience?
It was very exciting. I had played AAU ball, which I know most people think of AAU ball right now as something for youth, but when I played, it was for women. And they had Midwest. I played on it during the end of my Carroll season and all spring long. That's why I didn't participate in track and field anymore. And we traveled all over the Midwest, and then we would go to the national tournament. So you always got national exposure or Midwest exposure in the game. And when I was drafted, I was really excited. I got a letter in the mail. It wasn't anything like today where they're on TV and you go to New York or wherever they're having it. You got a letter in the mail saying you were drafted. But unfortunately, you'd have to, I'd have to move to Minneapolis, and they'd pay you $2,000 a year, which wasn't enough to live on at that time. And I think the league lasted 2 months the first go round. So although I was excited and wanted to make it work, it just wasn't the right decision for me. So I never joined the league and just went on and got a job. And, that's what society expected of you at that time as a woman.
So what advice would you offer to any women's student athletes that are in college today and are maybe about to graduate?
Oh, I advise them to find balance in their life. I think as an athlete, you tend to, everything is about your sport, and you train, and your whole focus to be great, you have to just stay with it all the time. And I think as you leave athletics, you need to find balance in your life, use all the tools of athletics. I mean, there's such wonderful lessons that are learned in athletics, whether you talk about being good to yourself, you have to learn how to take care of yourself and be very good to yourself. And, or if you're talking about being a leader, all those types of things, or discipline, but just to find balance in your life, find happiness. You're gonna, for me, I had a husband, a son, I had my job, I had coaching, and then you have your friends, your network of friends, and you can just wear yourself out completely and forget about what's truly important in life. And I really encourage them to look for what their balance point is and enjoy life.
And my last question, do you feel that you were able to teach those types of values to the high school athletes that you taught and coached during your career?
I most certainly hope so. My goal was to develop a program and you have a culture where the seniors teach the rest of the kids what our culture is, and you just keep it in perpetuity. So, I wanted them, I pushed them hard, especially in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. You could push athletes quite hard. It changed, in the 2000s where, they had to have a little more fun, or mom, the parent issue changed the whole coaching dynamic. But yeah, I sure hope I did. I know it was funny. I got a message from a gal just before this, and she said, I hadn't heard from her since 1982. And she said, oh, I remember that medal you gave me because I did something right that week. And she says, I still have it and value it. And I thought, well, I must have did something right.
Always nice to hear those stories, even all those years later. Well, Mary, I just want to thank you for your time this afternoon, and wish you the best. And yep, thank you for sharing all those great memories. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Girls and women's sports. My mother was a softball player back in the 50s after the war, and then they changed it so they just wanted only men again. And so it was kind of sad, when she'd talk about it where she couldn't do it. So I felt very honored that I was, my first year of high school, I was a Title IX athlete.
Mhm.
I was able to play all 4 years in high school, the first group too, and then come out and then spend many years in Wisconsin, especially in volleyball, to develop the club systems and things like that. So I always say you should give back to what's been given to you, and hopefully that just keeps carrying on to wonderful things. And go Pios!
It's some great advice you give, and like I said, I really appreciate you taking the time.
You're welcome. Thank you.